Hello and welcome to Pittsburgh Sports Memories broadcast. As usual, I'm your co-host Steve Wirt with,
Hey, I'm Tim Hannon.
and today we're going to talk about messy exits from the Pittsburgh sports scene. So, we didn't necessarily limit it to just people, like not just athletes. There'll be some people that were just kind of involved with sports, and maybe some teams that you might not think of, but definitely some messy exits here. Some people have that exit like kind of nailed down, like Jerome Bettis or even Ben Roethlisberger or Mario Lemieux. They kind of had graceful exits, and then there's this group of people. They did not have such graceful exits from the Pittsburgh sports scene. The first group, this is like I will call it. This is a group of Steelers and one media person. I think I put in here. It is like I call them more the Chuck Noll headaches. So, and later on, you'll find out that there's a different coach that had his own set of headaches. So, and the first one that had like a messy exit would be Franco. That would be one Franco Harris, and this is a pretty well known story. Franco had a Hall of Fame career with the Steelers. He's also caught that pretty famous play, the old immaculate receptions. He also won 4 Super Bowls. And at the end of his career, he actually had become a leading rusher. I think he was the 4th leading rusher in NFL history, and I think he was, of active players at the time, he was the leading rusher because probably Walter Payton was still kind of early on in his career. So that would make this 1983, and the summer of 1983. So what happened? What exit did Mr. Harris have that made it messy? That would be he held out for more money. In 1983, there was no free agency, so that was a bad idea because they didn't want to pay people more money. So the Steelers cut him. And what makes it even more messy was that when the reporters asked Chuck Noll about Harris leaving, do you know how Chuck Noll responded?
Franco who?
Yeah, instead of just I realized Chuck Noll wasn't the warm and cuddliest person in the world. And, he just could have said, maybe if he'd been asked 20 times, I could understand. How are you going to get along without Franco? And You could have given the stock. We're just going to worry about the people that are here. We can't worry about people that are left. We wish them the best with their future career, blah, blah, blah. But he just had heard enough. But I guess Harris hadn't his play he hadn't even left Pittsburgh and signed with Seattle yet. So it was just a very cold moment to a very popular. And he was a popular player. They had Franco's Italian Armory, and he ended up signing a deal with the Seattle Seahawks. So what was the kind of the aftermath of all this? Harris. He was probably done. The Steelers didn't make a mistake in cutting him. He only played in another 8 games that season with the Seahawks, and I don't think he had that very many yards. I didn't even write down his stats. How did it go for Chuck Noll? Well, he never really made another Super Bowl. He kind of had a bad 80s and a little bit of the 90s. He just was kind of done. So the Steelers, the good news is the Steelers and Franco made up after Franco had retired that past year, I guess they said. And he's been a pretty prominent member of the Steelers. You'll see him around and talking to people and, hawking Steeler stuff. Was that a big deal in your house, Tim? Franco who? Or did your parents cut the bum?
I think what I remember, and I was pretty young, I remember people kind of being cut the bum because he was holding out for more money. That's never a popular thing in Pittsburgh, no matter who you are or whether you deserve it or not. But then at the same time, the Franco who thing, a lot of people kind of really held that against Chuck Noll. Okay, we were all mad at him, but man, he won you 4 Super Bowls, and he was here for a dozen seasons. I mean, you're right. Steelers did make the right decision there. I mean, 12 seasons as a punishing fullback. I can't believe he was even still playing, much less, demanding more money at that point. It seems impossible for a running back, especially one that ran like he did, to last that long. I know he supposedly ran out of bounds a lot, and that extended his career, but nevertheless, that was still a kind of a brutal era. So, but yeah, the Franco Who thing, a lot of people still remember that to this day. Probably more so than the holdout itself.
Yeah, I tell you who really held that against and didn't watch the Steelers until Chuck Noll retired was my dad. My dad, that really ticked my dad off, and he never watched. He hated. He was never a big pro football fan, and I think that just kind of totally soured him on it even more, because he always loved college football, and I think that was just the cherry on the top of the sundae for him, and he never liked Chuck Noll. Never, and we really didn't watch the Steelers until he retired and Cowher took over. So got that for you. So the next person on this list, another person that Chuck Noll had his ins and outs with, although this might be more on this person's end than Chuck's. That would be one Terry Bradshaw. We've talked about Terry before a couple times on the podcast. So where did Terry Bradshaw come from? He came from Louisiana Tech, where he was actually the backup quarter to the duck commander guy until that guy decided to make duck whistle calls instead of, Phil Robertson, I think is the guy's name. So instead of doing that, instead of being a quarterback, he went and made like millions of dollars doing that. But Terry Bradshaw did play football and would go on to be a first-round draft pick and 4-time Super Bowl winning quarterback. Is he still the highest Steelers draft pick since 1970, Tim?
Yes.
Wow. What number? Was he number 1 overall?
He was number 1 overall, yeah.
Oh, wow. So, well, you can't get any higher than that, so... So what happened? The messy exit here. I remember we talked about this on another podcast. He had injured his elbow in training camp, but he did not tell anyone in the team. So he had surgery actually under the assumed name Tom Brady without the Steelers' knowledge. I think we did it in like odd stories or something like that.
Yeah, or fun facts. We've mentioned that somewhere, that he had the surgery under the name Tom Brady, which was just a really odd coincidence.
Yeah, and so Bradshaw stated he did not know that was the name that was used. It was just one of those fluke things. Another great thing that Terry Bradshaw did was he disobeyed the doctor's orders. And instead of like resting his elbow for 3 months, because I think he had like something similar to a Tommy John surgery, he began throwing 2 months, like 1 month. He just like rested for 1 month and started throwing. And so it resulted in more tears to the elbow, and it like swelled up to like the size of a softball. So Terry didn't do himself any favors, and then like the Steelers really didn't know that he did that. And so on December 10th, 1983, a game against the Jets, which I actually saw his last on YouTube. It's floating around out there. He actually felt a pop in his elbow while throwing his final pass. And his final pass, ironically enough, was a 10-yard touchdown to a guy named Calvin Sweeney, the immortal Calvin Sweeney, Tim. I'm sure you had your Calvin Sweeney jersey when you were like, 5 years old in 1983.
Yeah, him and Weegie Thompson. Those were the receivers of the era.
And it actually ended up being a 34-7 win for the Steelers. He left the game and he never could play again. Those 2 touchdowns he threw would be his final NFL game. And it actually would be the final NFL game that the played in Shea Stadium. That was in Shea Stadium, believe it or not. He finished with 212 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And he said, I want to play 5. This is an article from the New York Times. I want to play 5 or 6 more years if my arm comes around, Bradshaw said. I don't want my career to end like this. A lot of them do, but I don't want mine too. Well, maybe you shouldn't have thrown the ball. Yeah. Maybe you should have followed the rehab instructions of a qualified surgeon. But hey, when you're from Louisiana, you know better, right? Anyway, the consequences were the Steelers don't draft a quarterback named Dan Marino. So maybe if they knew he was hurt, he would have been more honest. They would have like taken it more seriously. They would have drafted Terry Bradshaw. And Bradshaw's had mostly a love-hate relationship with the city, but mostly a hate relationship with his head coach. And I will say this in defense of Terry Bradshaw, as we can see in this era with like the Franco Who comment, like maybe he was afraid that if he told the Steelers he was hurt, they'd be like, "Well, see ya," and just cut him. And maybe they would have done that. I don't know. Normally, for like legendary players like that, they did. Even Chuck Noll didn't necessarily do that. If you kind of, were a loyal person and didn't just stick it to them. Even the guys, I don't know. They've been pretty generous to even people that have maybe not left on the greatest of terms. Terry included. They welcomed them back, had a whole ceremony and an whole thing. So,
yeah, it feels like with Terry, it's like it was a messy exit that has been messy ever since. Because like you said, like Franco, it was a messy exit, but all is forgiven, and we welcome them back with open arms, and a lot of people don't even think about that. And Bradshaw just seems like it's just been this up and down messy thing for, 40 years for whatever reason.
I think he holds on to stuff. And like you said, sometimes it's almost like he says, like whoever's interviewing him, he just says whatever he thinks they want to hear. He's a very has a very different kind of personality. So
yeah, it's not that he is bipolar, but the it's like very bipolar-ish.
Yeah, it's statements. Up and down. 1 second, I love Coach Noll and the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And I said, I hate them. They booed me and benched me.
Right. It's that kind of stuff. And
wouldn't let me sing country music. And
right. You could put together like a string of quotes of Terry just completely contradicting himself. So it is what it is. I mean, what are you going to do? He was a great player, and we won 4 Super Bowls because of him. And what else can you say? I mean, that's really all you can say. He's fun to watch on TV. I mean, his songs weren't terrible.
Yeah, he makes he had that I think that was a top 5 hit. Yeah, on the country charts. So good for Terry. So sticking with our Steelers theme. Now this guy, maybe I don't know if he ever gave Chuck Noll any headaches, but he was kind of in that era, although he kind of spanned the Cowher era too. So he was there a long time. That would be one Myron Cope. You say, Myron Cope, how did that guy ever have a messy exit? Well, let me tell you. So if you don't know, if you've been like living under a rock, or well, maybe not, he's been gone like since he died in 2008. So he's been gone a minute. Maybe you don't know. Myron Cope was a long broadcaster for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the radio back when people used to listen to games on the radio. If you're ever stuck in your car, you can do that. Turn on, whatever radio station they're on nowadays. Was that DVE still? So it was Jack Fleming and then Bill Hillgrove. And also Myron Cope had a long print career. He actually wrote a lot of stuff for Sports Illustrated and the Post-Gazette. He also he had his own radio shows, like talk radio shows, for a while on I think it was 1250. I don't know about KDK, but he definitely had just like your standard hey Myron, what do you think of Terry Bradshaw getting hurt? I'll hang up and listen, that kind of stuff. So. I bet that happened. He used to have a show called Cope's Cabana, which was the post game for the Steelers, which was just highly entertaining because he sang the song Copacabana by Barry Manilow. He had this he had these crazy phrases like "ogo dogo" and "yoy" and he invented the terrible towel, which everybody knows what that is, and he actually donates all the money from that to the Allegheny School. So how did this all go awry? Well, it didn't really all go awry. It was a messy exit. So he had gotten actually sick during the 2004 season. And I remember this. He missed some of that Eagles game that year because he had fallen at home and they had to send somebody to find him. So, and he actually retired after the AFC Championship game when the Steelers got blown out by the Patriots. And that was, so he actually missed the Super Bowl win in 2005, at least broadcasting it. So the NFL, like for his years of service and like being a minor celebrity, said, "How about we'll give you a ceremony for the Hall of Fame." They invited him to the Hall of Fame, and he says he didn't, but everybody who saw this says he was. I'm saying he showed up drunk, but what is not in dispute is that he gave a rambling speech, and at which point how the Oscars will just play you off. Well, they did more than that. They sent a guy up from like the Hall of Fame, tapped him on the shoulder, and like made him go sit down. So the Trib actually interviewed him about it, and he said, "I would call it the big shot bombs at the Hall of Fame." He actually apologized for his rambling speech. It went more than 10 minutes over a strict television time limits. He had received the NFL's highest broadcasting honor, the Hall of Fame's Pete Rozelle Radio and Television Award. He just said, "I just felt horrible about what I did," Cope said. "My behavior was stupid. I wanted to apologize to the people who were there, the fans and the people at the Hall of Fame." He said it was conceit, not an extended happy hour that led to his puzzling behavior. He had actually retired after 35 reasons. So were there any fallout? I don't really think there was really any fallout from this besides like maybe a few people that don't like him that may or may not be named Mark Madden. But Cope is still a legend with the fans and the media. It's just one of those things. It just kind of gets swept under the rug. You just kind of shrug your shoulders about it, like, he's the body of work was so good, and we're not going to hold like one. Who of us hasn't gotten drunk and said some stupid stuff
at the Pro Football Hall of Fame? I mean, we've all done that.
Well, maybe not in quite the public forum that he did, but I can certainly say I've shot my mouth off more than once. So, at least not in front of millions of people yet.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Like completely forgot about that.
Exactly to my point. That's to my point. Is nobody holds it against them.
No, that was a good memory on your part for a messy exit, because I completely forgot about that, and I don't think we talked about it in the 2005 Super Bowl episode that we did, and I almost put it on the Forgotten Controversies. But do you remember there was a group of people that wanted the Steelers to bring him back just to announce Super Bowl 40?
Oh, I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that. That would have been. I think he was too past his prime. He had started to get ill, and he knew it. He had said that he had told a friend of his, "Tell me when I'm starting to lose it, because I don't want to, embarrass myself unless I'm at the Pro Football Hall of Fame." Then
his friend was asleep at the wheel that night. Apparently,
grab him. Maybe his friend was the one who finally went up and was like, "Hey, you gotta sit down." It's a shame. I mean, it's a shame that happened, but nobody remembers it, so it's not really that big of a deal. And it just, he just said he got a big head and just kind of got carried away. So it is what it is. So now the next group of Steeler messy exits will be Mike Tomlin headaches. So I think we all can know. We won't hold this one out any longer, because who do you think will be number one on this list, Tim?
Some guy that wore number 84, probably.
Yes. I realize there's kind of like a 1A and a 1B in this situation there for sure.
Yeah, I think the 1A is tops of the list, and the one and number 84. I mean, there are like multiple cities sports memory podcast that could put him on the same list.
Well, let's go through it, Tim. Here, let's break it down. If you have a guess, this is one Antonio Brown. He was selected in the 6th round. He was actually the 22nd out of 27 wide receivers that were picked in the whole draft. So it was towards the bottom. Gee, I wonder why. So what did he do? He only went on to have a Hall of Fame career as a wide receiver. His stats are unbelievable. The catches he made were like, I'm looking at some of them now. He had for 3 years. Wow. Geez, man. I only went to 2019. He's been over 100 receptions from 2000. Oh my gosh. That's from like 2012 to 2019. He had 100 receptions every year. That's insane. Now, some of that was him. I got to get my 5 catches and blah, blah, blah yards. So that might be a little inflated, but that's still pretty impressive. I mean, these aren't just like tipping the scales. Like these are 1 year was 101, but 110, 129, 136. You're at 100 passes, like 80 passes in a year is pretty good, but 100, that's impressive. So he was really good. And for, I'd say the first 4 or 5 years he was here, he was pretty quiet. I don't think you heard too much from him. So how did this all go awry? Well, this is pretty infamous in the halls of Steeler history here. Before the final week of the 2018 season, Brown had mostly gained it for his season. So he was given, like, that week 17, Brown was giving a rest day on Wednesday. So he didn't practice for the rest of the week for what they said was a knee injury. And then Brown was inactive for the game that Sunday. And Tomlin actually said that benching was due to injury and lack of information. And then, like, reports were later that Brown had actually thrown a football at Ben Roethlisberger during the week. And also he was mad because Juju Smith-Schuster was being named team MVP and not him, because that's important. And it was just, I think they just had enough of his act. And I think they were out of the playoffs by then, weren't they? I think this season, Tim?
They had to win and then have Cleveland beat Baltimore, which Cleveland almost did. That was the game where we won our game, and then everybody stood around the field. They put the end of the Browns game on the scoreboard, and Baker led them like into Baltimore territory, but then they like went out on downs or something. It was, so they weren't out of the playoffs, but they were, they needed sort of a little bit of a miracle.
Yeah, and so like it really kind of was like a very nondescript game. So you say, oh, the Steelers, kind of cut him and got rid of him. So they ended up trading him on March 9th to the Oakland Raiders in exchange for a 3rd and 5th round selection. So actually, prior to the Oakland deal, they wanted to trade him to the Buffalo Bills, but Brown wasn't going to Buffalo, so they couldn't trade him there. So this guy is like, there's like more mess to the already. They're trying to get rid of him, and now he's going to tell them where he wants to go or he's going to go. So, I mean, this guy's had like, I know Ryan Clark didn't like him. He said they were going to offer him money, and he said, if you give him money, you're going to create a monster. And he said, like, him and Brown almost got in a fight, and he started like saying things to Coach LeBeau. And he was like screaming at Coach LeBeau and like, don't touch me, I'm the franchise, is what Brown said. So, I mean, Troy Polamalu didn't like him, and I guess it was the same incident. Troy Polamalu, and I know we covered this in another podcast, I'm pretty sure. He got so mad at him, he said the wide receivers coach, Scotty Montgomery, the receivers are live targets the rest of the period, so Troy wanted to start going and like hitting Antonio Brown, like for real. So, I mean, you pissed off Troy Polamalu. Ryan Clark, maybe, but Troy Polamalu, really? Come on. So, what happened to Antonio Brown? After he went to Oakland, I don't think he didn't play any games for Oakland because he got in a fight with John Gruden and Mike Mayock over like a ton of different stuff, like a helmet and this. And then he went to New England and played 1 week there and actually had a good week. And then he did something like he was tweeting about something, or wasn't he harassing somebody he had a legal problem with? And so New England.
Yeah, it was a woman.
Yeah, so New England cut him. And then he went to Tampa Bay, and he actually like kind of minded his behavior finally. And he wasn't like as good as he was, but he was still good. And he caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl and got a Super Bowl ring finally with Tampa Bay. And then finally last year, like they needed him in a game, and like Brady told him to get in there, and like Arians told him, he went nuts again and walked off the field, took off his shirt and walked off the field and said he didn't, wasn't going to play. So according to Brown, it's everyone else's fault, right? Everybody's out to get Mr. Antonio Brown, like Ryan Clark, Troy Polamalu, Mike Tomlin, John Gruden, Mike Mayock, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady again, and finally Bruce Arians. Yes, all these people are the bad guys and just picking on poor old Antonio Brown.
Yeah, it's just such a shame because he's the greatest receiver in the history of the team. Like I know Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, Hines Ward. There's even Santonio Holmes. There's been some great receivers, but he's the greatest. That like just watching him play was just amazing. He was so consistent. He was so good in the clutch. All that stuff, and then he just like threw away. He still, I mean, he was getting older, but he still had several good years left in his career, and he just totally imploded. And I don't know. It's just a sad thing. Like I'm not even like mad at him or hate him or anything. I'm just sad for him, I guess.
Like Tom Brady literally stuck his neck out twice for him, and he
Yeah.
screwed him both times. So there's just a lack of self awareness, or just a severe narcissism, or like it's just I don't know what's wrong with the dude. He's just I hope he saved his money because he's going to need it. So moving onward and upward, the next guy on our list is LeGarrette Blunt. So he was a journeyman running back. He had his best year with the the Patriots the year before. And then in the offseason, he signed with the Steelers for the 2014 season. So he was like kind of a big running back, and I guess they just needed somebody to help. That was in the Le'Veon Bell years, yeah. To help, the young Le'Veon Bell out on some carries, take some load off. And he was big. Like, he was good for, like, the first and goals and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, on November 17th, 2014, LeGarrette Blount decided to leave the game early. He decided he'd had enough of his work. And he didn't get a touch. He didn't get any carries that year. So, he left before the game was ended. He also, like, got released, and he only scored 2 touchdowns for the Steelers. Apparently, like in Nashville, he dressed and left the locker room and headed for the team bus. He didn't even wait like in the locker room for the rest of the team to come in. At least one player thought they should leave him in Nashville. Another quote was that Blunt had been an internal problem for at least a month for the Steelers, and sources told the Post-Gazette that he's dragging down star Le'Veon Bell, even though, Bell still had some good performances with him there. So, I mean, there was some off-the-field stuff that Blunt was involved with Bell, too. I think there was a traffic stop with, like, some marijuana or something. So, but I think they were going, like, 80 or 90. They weren't, like, going slow. So what were the consequences? Well, that season, the Steelers, they lost to Baltimore in the playoffs. He was criticized by teammates. They call him a cancer. A lot of people wondered, why did he even sign with the Steelers in the first place? Because he went right back to the Patriots the next week. And it's actually kind of funny because I've thought this for years. I thought this was a case of tampering by the Patriots and Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniel. And Ed Bouchette, to his credit, did ask him because the Patriots made the Super Bowl that year. And Blunt did answer no, and he did not orchestrate his exit. And he would not answer whether the Patriots would have wanted him back before he left the Steelers. He said, I enjoyed my time here, and they brought me back, and I'm just happy to be here. There was always rumors that happened, that there was texts between him and the Patriots coaching staff, and that there was some, like, tampering going on. But I couldn't find that reported anywhere in the media. So we'll just have to take it that, the Steelers cut him. Like, was he under instructions from, the Patriots coaching staff to, just, totally be an idiot so we can get you back, or not? Do you put any stock in that, Tim?
I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. So no, I don't put a lot of stock in it, but at the same time, if anybody was going to pull that off, it would definitely be the Patriots. But yeah, I mean, you said that they lost to Baltimore in the playoffs that year.
I think they did, yeah.
Yeah, they did. But I was going to say, I'll give you $100 if you can remember who the starting running back in that game was, because Le'Veon Bell had gotten hurt, and then we didn't have Blunt anymore.
2014.
Yep.
I don't know. Landis Gary. I don't know.
It was Josh Harris, the immortal Josh Harris.
Yes.
Was the leading rusher in that playoff game, 25 yards, and they had signed Ben Tate off the street.
Oh, wow.
Literally, they had signed him like that week. I can't remember the last.
So having Blunt might have helped, although they did get blown out.
Well, but that hurt not having any kind of run. It was very one-dimensional offense in that game because. And Bell had literally gotten hurt the last game of the season against Cincinnati. So like the week before Bell goes down, they signed Ben Tate off the street to come play a playoff game. And then Josh Harris was the other guy. I mean, it was just, it was like, not that they had no chance, but I mean, they really were struggling to compete. And so Blunt self-imploding that year really kind of, you could say led to the demise of the team in the playoffs eventually.
Yeah. So next up on our Mike Tomlin headaches, people, James Harrison. Why, you say James Harrison was never a headache? Oh, yes, he was. Now, this is a perfect case of I think there is proof that he did this intentionally. And once again, boy, what a shocker it involves the Patriots. Because I think this was after the Blunt thing. This actually happened after the Blunt thing. So James Harrison, who is he? I don't know how you don't know who he is, but hey, here we go. He's one of the greatest outside linebackers to ever play for the Steelers. He actually made an iconic play in Super Bowl 43 with that interception, return for a touchdown. So when did it come to his messy exit? He was actually on his third stint with the Steelers. He had gone to Cincinnati, I think, for a year, come back to the Steelers, got cut again. I don't know where he went after. Did he go to the Patriots that time? I don't know.
His third stint was because early in his career, he was with the Steelers and they cut him. And then he went to the Ravens and then he came back to the Steelers before anybody knew who he was.
Okay.
So this is why.
This is after Cincinnati.
This is after Cincinnati.
And before. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so once again, he wasn't playing much. But Harrison, they had said, was starting to carry on in the locker room. They called him a locker room cancer. And Mike Tomlin wouldn't cut him because he was afraid he might need him due to injuries. According to Paul Zeiss, Bud Dupree said Harrison would leave the stadium as soon as he found out he was inactive. So, as soon as he walked in, I'm inactive. All right, going home. See you guys later. It's he wouldn't even, try. He didn't attend practice or meetings and rarely would come in the locker room. And he wouldn't visit Ryan Shazier in the hospital either. So that's pretty much par for the course with James Harrison. Dupree also said at the end of the day, he just did a lot of stuff that really wasn't Steeler-like. It's no one's fault on our team why he got cut. He cut himself. He came in. He didn't want to do anything that made us better. Harrison's side of the story, for balance here. I know, balanced reporting, Tim. What is that? I know. Harrison said the breaking point came after the 27-24 loss to the Patriots, a game in which he was told during the week to be ready. I'd get a lot of playing time. And if he figured if I didn't play in the biggest game of the year, that told me I wouldn't get any more snaps. So all that lip service you gave me before didn't matter. It is, of course, referring to him and Tomlin. Harrison said he went to Steelers coach Mike Tomlin, asked to be released. Tomlin then said, I have to be crazy to release you. What if something happens with injuries? So what happened was he ended up getting cut, and he actually went to the Patriots. And the Steelers lost to the amazing Blake Bortles in Jacksonville in the first round. And Harrison did play for New England, but they lost the Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. He only had one tackle in the Super Bowl. I think in the whole playoffs he had 2 tackles. So he didn't do much of anything. And you know what? Neither him nor Bill Belichick could figure out the Philly special. So those 2 defensive geniuses didn't work. Didn't see that one coming, did you guys? So this guy will take because this guy is pretty known to have a pretty bad Antonio Brown. I think there's actually a personality disorder. This guy's just a jerk. And I mean, that's great, and it works for him, and he's made a career out of it. But you know what? To play this game, they should have just kept them. They should have just kept them, and say, when you don't come here, find them. Just make them pay for play for free. So
yeah, that I feel like that's another one, kind of like Franco, where people were upset about it at the time, but aren't really anymore. And if they have like the 2008 Super Bowl reunion team at some point at stadium, he'll get the biggest cheer, So he's one of those guys where people aren't going to hold it against him too much. But you're right, that was his personality, and like you said, we all loved it when he was, going after the Cleveland or Baltimore players. But then it's like that's just his personality, unfortunately. So it is what it is, and like you could say, I can kind of see his side. Like, he was coming back. He had unretired to so that he could be used, and they did use him for quite a few years after he retired. But by that point, he was just washed, and they didn't. I mean, Tomlin wasn't benching him to be a jerk. Tomlin was benching him because there were other guys that were more effective.
Yeah, Bud Dupree, and I forget it was on the other. Were just way better at that point. So. Yep. So, and the last, but maybe not least, not second to last, because I kind of did this in this order to prove a point here. And we'll notice is like Mike Tomlin, I think after these next couple of people kind of figured things out last season with how to handle these type of situations and people, the players want to act like this. And next is one Le'Veon Bell. He was a second-round pick. He was very good. He made the Pro Bowl. He was like a hybrid running back / wide receiver. He reminded me of Thurman Thomas. When you like very Thurman Thomas like, and when he wasn't hurt, which he unfortunately seemed to always be in the playoffs, he was very good. But he didn't show up in big games, and definitely that one AFC Championship game against New England, they really, really could have used him. So the messy exit. On 2018, the Steelers kept franchising him for the second straight year. He was still getting $14.5 million. But he refused to sign the franchise tag and did not attend any team activities after the contract stalled. He actually that season missed the first 9 regular season games and then did not report to the Steelers prior to the deadline. So he missed the whole season of holding out. On the next year, the Steelers said they're not going to franchise him, and they made him a free agent, and he went and became a free agent. So he didn't like the franchise tag, basically, and he thought he could make more as a free agent. So, let's see. He had actually declined an offer for $60 million in 2017. So he earned 12.12, and I mean, he didn't have any runs that went over 20 yards. So he really. Oh, that was the Jets deal. I'm sorry. That was the Jets deal. The Steelers had actually offered him $70 million over 5 years. So he actually got less. That's how it works out. And like he strung the Steelers along saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to play. And he like literally missed a whole year in his career that he at least could have made $14 million that year. So not the smartest businessman in the world. I mean, I realize running backs don't like get a tremendous like amount of money or have a long career, but I mean, I think I read somewhere he wanted 15 million guaranteed, and he never quite got to that number, and that's the number he wanted. So he didn't like the franchise tag. That's a problem when the next CBA comes up. Tell your union, I guess, but it is what it is. If you sign a contract, you should probably at least follow through on it. And my God, if we all have to suffer through making between $12 and $14 million a year, I don't know. Can you get by on $12 million a year, Tim? Can you scrape by? Cut back,
Barely.
Buy the generics, go to Aldi,
Well, I'll say this in his defense. He did play out his contract. What they were doing was your contract's up. now we're going to make you play one more year, and then we're going to make you play 1 year after that. And yeah, it's a ton of money for 1 year, but then as a running back, you get hurt or you start to wear out, and that's the end of the line. You're not going to get a 4 or 5 year deal after that. So they were delaying his prime just to eke 2 more years out of him. So I can see being upset about that for sure. But there was two problems. One was, like you already referenced it, Steve. It was his union that agreed to that being the rules. So take it up with your union, not the Steelers. And then number two, just the way he conducted himself. Like, I think he could have been very, very professional. And because you've seen this guy's holding out, even like this year, there was a guy for the Bears that was holding out. I mean, you just say, hey, look, I think this is going to hurt me more than help me, and here's why. And I've played out my contract, and now they want to franchise me 2 years around. I'm just not going to do that. I love the fans. I love being here, but I'm just not going to do that. I'll just wait. If they're going to franchise me, then I'll just wait it out till that's over, and I'll go play somewhere else. But no hard feelings. Like, he could have been just all business about it. And like you said, he did that thing where he strung them along, and his teammates were even starting to get really ticked off because they were like thinking that he was going to be there for week 1, then he wasn't. Then it was like week 5, and they're getting asked about it, and he's like, what was he doing? Like on like a jet ski in Miami or something.
Yeah.
It's like, just come out and say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is why it doesn't make sense for me. And I'm sure there still have been a lot of fans that have been like, go, you're a football player, just play. But like, I don't know. I don't feel like people would have gotten so angry about it. When you're taking off your teammates, who are the people that should understand better than anybody, right? They're your brothers. They're in that with you. They have the same kind of needs for their careers, right? They should be on your side. When your teammates are even not on your side in a contract dispute, that's when you've really screwed things up.
And the rest of the story is Paul Harvey would say. He barely played for the Jets. He actually got cut in 2020, and the Jets paid him $28 million, and he only played in 17 games. He only gained like 1,300 yards. So the Jets didn't really get anything out of him. He went to Tampa Bay and Kansas City and did nothing there too. I don't know if did he get a Super Bowl ring either of those places? I don't think so.
I don't even remember. Yeah, and then didn't he play for Baltimore too last year?
I think for like 1 week, 1 or 2 weeks. The Steelers, on their part, had drafted James Conner, but that didn't really work out for them, mainly because the offensive line started to age out. So the Steelers, eventually, they cut James Conner and drafted Najee Harris. So they're on to their third replacement guy here. So hopefully it works out, but I don't think it's going to work out until the offensive line gets significantly better. You could put Jim Brown back there, and it might not matter. So on to the last guy, and I think this is where Mike Tomlin has figured it out. He's figured out, and this is the guy that kind of proved to me that, okay, Tomlin has figured out how to handle these people, these type of players. So Melvin Ingram. He had a very good career as an outside linebacker with the Chargers. He was coming off a knee injury the season before. So in the offseason, the Steelers signed him to help with the defensive line and back up TJ Watt. And they also were going to it was a really great idea, and it looked like it was really going to work. They were going to rotate him and TJ Watt and keep them both fresh. So once again, I don't think this is a case where Harrison said, oh, they're stringing me along. I had heard that in the media. They had said that. The Steelers were right up front with this guy. They said, you are going to be a backup, a role player. So he knew what he was getting into. So the messy exit. Ingram was actually traded to Kansas City in the middle of the season for a 6th-round selection. I think it's Tomlin's quote, to be honest with you, Melvin no longer wanted to be here, and for us, we prefer volunteers as opposed to hostages, and we believe that's a formula that really allows us to come together in ways that you can't measure. That's more a function of us and the things that we value and less of a function of Kansas City. The things that they need are the prospects of playing them later in the season. So, this guy, like, he just started the whole locker room cancer kind of thing. Not as bad, I think, as Harrison or like Eric Blunt. He just kind of said, "Oh, I want to get traded. I want to traded." And to Tomlin's credit, he said, "Okay, we'll trade you." So, any consequences from this? Not really. The Steelers did play him and the Chiefs in the playoffs, but Melvin Ingram, he had no effect on that game. The people that beat them in that game was Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and the other players on the Kansas City offense. They got blown out 42-21. It was a little bit of a close game in the first half, but after the second quarter, it was pretty much over. That's of course, Tomlin now has an infamous quote: "We want volunteers, not hostages." And like I said before, I think Tomlin really figured out that, like, okay, now with the trade deadline where it is, you have to figure out, like, if you have one of these veteran free agents, are they going to be a team player or are they going to be, a problem? And if they're a problem, hit the bricks. And that seems to have worked out pretty well for them last year.
Yeah, good point. There's still some skepticism in me on, is it hit the bricks? It's always easier to hit the bricks when you're Melvin Ingram as opposed to, I don't know, Antonio Brown in his prime, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, and that's always been. I mean, that goes back to even like the Cowher days or if you think about like the guys that were getting in trouble then, the Cedric Wilsons of the world that hit his girlfriend, and no, we can't have that. But then James Harrison did the same thing, and it was like, well, he's just trying to take his kid to be baptized. I mean, so I don't know. I guess time will tell. But you're right. They handled that one well. It's hard in sports because you have that all the time, and not all the time, I shouldn't say that, but you have that from time to time where you have players getting in trouble. And it's also hard for us as fans to know if somebody gets in trouble, was that just like one bad decision, or is that indicative of their personality and what they're bringing to the team? And I think in Ingram's case, and it's sort of similar to Harrison a few years before, it was more of the latter.
Yeah. They just had enough of that, and he wasn't going to let his team get all messed up by that. So good for Mike Tomlin. So moving on from that to a portion of the podcast I like to call Pirate Incompetence. That would be your Pittsburgh Pirates.
We could do a whole podcast called Pirate Incompetence.
Yeah. Well, this is really incompetent. That would be one Pat Mears. Bum, bum, bum. This is like infamous on how not to run a baseball team. He was a big free agent signed by the Pirates in 1999 for $15 million over 4 years, which doesn't sound that much now, but back then it was. So he was really good for, I think, the Twins for 4 years. He was a pretty good hitting shortstop and not a bad fielding one either. But then he had one good season and he got hurt. And this thing just drug out for 2 years. So what happened was, in the last game of exhibition, he hit a foul ball, hit his left hand, and it damaged the bottom two fingers, making him unable to grip the bat. At the time, the Pirates thought it was just like a sprain or a bruise, but it ended up being like severe damage to his hand. So basically, instead of when the Pirates figured out this guy couldn't come back, you've seen all the doctors, he can't come back, he can't play baseball, just give the man his money and move on with your life, right? No, they fought with him for 2 years because they wanted to have the insurance pay it. Who the hell cares? Cut the guy and have the insurance fight with the insurance company. That's who you fight with, not Pat Mears. In that way, too, you can move on. You can sign another. It was just always in limbo. I remember for years, it was is Pat Mears coming back? Is Pat Mears? It was so crazy that this long contract battle lasted 2 years. After his injury, he only batted .238 in 17 home runs and 79 RBIs. So that for their $15 million, that's all they got. Was not a lot of performance. It finally ended. They did finally pay him his money. I remember Jason Kendall had a shrine to Pat Mears in the locker room, his locker. They actually kept his locker in the locker room. This is how stupid it was. So the bottom line, the Pirates are cheap and have bad ownership. This
Really
was
the bottom line to every pirate story.
I mean, is it any wonder they've only had 3 winning seasons over the last 40 years? I mean, this is just stupid. Just cut the guy and pay him his money. Pay him his money and move on with your life. And they just refuse to do that. So, anything to add to that silliness, Tim?
No, I mean, I do remember the shrine and how ridiculous that was that they made a shrine to him in the locker room, and I think the management tried to make them take it down, which made it worse.
It's just a badly managed team. And that went through 2 general managers. I think Cam Bonifay signed him, and then Dave Littlefield ended up trying to clean up the mess. So Dave Littlefield just kind of got saddled with that. So a next person, and I don't know, maybe you'll disagree with me on this messy exit. Maybe you won't. One, Barry Lamar Bonds. He came to the Pirates in 1986 and proceeded to become one of the best baseball players in the league. He never really spent any time in the minors, and he hit a bunch of home runs. He joined the 30-30 club. He had 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases, and he won a couple of gold gloves in left field. That was all with the Pirates, not what he did with the Giants later. So in 92, the Pirates tried to trade him for Alejandro Pena and Keith Mitchell, but Jim Leland made him keep him. So Bonds actually stayed with the Pirates that next year and won another MVP award. And he hit .311 with 34 home runs and 103 RBIs. Now that's a good hitter, Tim. And they actually what happened was Game 7, we all know he couldn't throw out he couldn't throw out Sid Bream at home plate for the game-winning run. So, then the following season, he left to sign a lucrative free agent contract worth a then record $43.75 million. And that's supposedly equivalent to $82.1 million in 2021. That was over 6 years. It was the largest in baseball history. It just, with Bobby Bonilla and, Barry Bonds, it just seemed like the Pirates were in disarray, which they were going to. And I just think the fact that, it ended on such a sour note, that was like the exclamation point to that season. It's like the Pirates stink. It wasn't like, oh, at least we won a World Series and then everybody left. It was like, nope, you won in the most disappointing move ever. And it's just that's kind of what happened. He's also Barry Bonds is very much a jerk. He's been described as arrogant, rude, moody. I think the paper, even the Pittsburgh media, voted him most despised Pirate. So he's not that well loved, but he was a really good baseball player. And
yeah, I do agree it was a messy exit. And to your point, it wasn't just that he left, because the same year he left, Doug Drabick left, who was our Cy Young Award-winning ace pitcher, and no one would remember that as a messy. I mean, people weren't happy that he left, but that was just the way things were going in baseball at that point. So it wasn't just that he left; it was that people were tired of him already by his last year because of all the antics and all the, like you said, kind of sour comments and everything else. But everybody was mostly willing to overlook that because he was just so talented. And then when he couldn't throw out Sid Bream, it was like, okay, then what's the point, right? What's the point if you can't? And that he always, not only, it wasn't just not throwing out Sid Bream, it was that he always choked in the playoffs every year. And so again, what's the point if you can hit 40 home runs or whatever, but then you get into the clutch part of the season, you can't win anything for us. So yeah, that was just messy, and the fact that Bonds wasn't a likable person even a little bit just made that
definitely didn't help
thing messy. Yep.
Yeah, so the Pirates, they haven't been competitive for 20 years after that. They had 3 good years, and now they've gone back to losing all the time. Barry Bonds did hit 73 home runs in the season and broke Hank Aaron's record for what it's worth. So
yep, all natural too. Just totally.
Hey, you know what? if you threw a spitball before it was illegal, does that make your strikeouts count any less? I'm just saying, steroids were not illegal. He did not break any rules doing what he did. So moving on to another guy that probably would have been better staying here. We'll call this the Pitt football section of the podcast. That would be one Walt Harris. We did a whole 2004 episode on this season, but he was hired in 97 to turn around the Pitt football program. It had only won 12 games in 4 seasons, Tim. Wow.
It's like when you say that out loud, it's like even worse than I remember.
Yeah. But what he did do is he did turn them into a respectable team. They had gone to Liberty Bowl. They had beat Phillip Rivers in the Tangerine Bowl. And they had a good season against they'd won the Insight.com Bowl too. Wherever Insight.com is now these days, I'm not sure. But they had a very magical 2004 season. But what had happened was in October, his agent had said that Pitt is not a major power. It is not one of the top 20 jobs in the country. And so, Harris didn't contradict those comments because I think those were Harris's thoughts. So what happened was I know a lot of his players didn't like him. And the last straw, I think, with the fans was when he had Tyler Palko slide to set up a field goal. And they were playing UConn, who had just started playing Division I college football yesterday, So it was not a good look. Even though he actually ended up winning a Big East co-champions there that year. And at the end of the season, they made their first, and I think that's still their only BCS bowl. They let him go. And they let him, and he actually went to Stanford. He did get a job at Stanford. So the aftermath, the university hired Dave Wannstedt, and he pretty much suffered the same issues as Harris. He was they were always mediocre, not terrible, but they were never really able to have a breakout season. And so they would go on. Pitt as a program would go on to have another 20 coaches in 2 seasons before they finally settled on Pat Narduzzi. Walt Harris, for his part, he only lasted 2 seasons at Stanford. He was terrible there. His second year, he only had 1 win. He's not had another head coaching job since. And he's not been anywhere as a coach at all. He was at Cal U, and I remember this as an offensive coordinator in 2010. So in an interview with Ron Cook in 2008, Harris stated that our record at Pitt is what it is. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of some of the other things we did there. Our graduation rate, keeping the off-field problems to a minimum. So I think Walt Harris just kind of got him back to respectability, but for whatever reason, he could just never quite put it all together. And then he kind of shot off his mouth in the press, and the university got mad at him. So anything to add to the Walt Harris messy debacle there? I think what made it messy was that he criticized the university in public, and you don't see that very often.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like you said, we did a whole episode about that, so go back and listen if you haven't, because there was a lot to that story, and it was just odd that after their best season, that's when they let him go. But that was just kind of how things shook out. So definitely not a clean exit.
All right, sticking with the theme of Pitt football coaches leaving, this would be one Dr. Sutherland. He was born in Cooper Angus, Scotland, in 1915. He actually played for Pitt from 1915 to 1917, and the 1917 team was known as the Fighting Dentists. And that wasn't because you get your teeth knocked out. That was because they are a bunch of dentists.
Wow, that's frightening to opponents.
Yeah. Well, they do say, what's the difference between a sadist and a dentist, right? Wow. I shouldn't probably go to the dentist for a while after that comment. So, Dr. Sutherland actually graduated from the Pitt School of Dentistry. So he actually is a doctor. He was an All-American under Coach Pop Warner, and he played for Pitt. During his tenure, Pitt's teams won all kinds of championships. They also appeared in 4 Rose Bowl games. And they did turn down a bowl for the 1938 Rose Bowl because I guess it wasn't enough money or something. They were named national champions several different times, but the university only recognizes, I think, 5 of those. He had a dream backfield with Marshall Goldberg. They say it rivals the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame. And as of 2009, his career coaching record is 144, 28, and 14. And that's at 812 winning percentage. And that's still the 25th best of all of college football. So he was a really excellent coach. He's also tied for 23rd fewest games to reach 100 victories. Just like I said, he's a very excellent coach. So what was the exit? Well, towards the end of this time, in usual Pitt fashion, Southern, he found himself at odds with the university administration. The chancellor, a gentleman named John Gabbard Bauman. Well, this is never trust a man with 3 names, Tim. Lee Harvey Oswald, Mark David Chapman. It's bad. It's trouble, right? John Wayne Gacy, right now. Not that this guy is a murderous person of any type, except for on the athletic department, figuratively. He wanted to lessen the focus on athletics. So as a result, a new set of guidelines for athletics was developed, which stated that the school would not recruit students to play sports. That might be a problem. The rumors of him leaving everywhere, there's like a New York Times articles. I even found something in the Cornell newspaper about it. Why the Cornell student newspaper wrote an article on it, I'm not sure, but they did. So in March of 39, Southern announced he had asked the university to accept his resignation, and they did. I think he actually I heard a story he put the letter down and then had wanted to take it back, but he didn't. And there's apparently still the university has a letter from a young boy who threatened to jump off a building downtown if Dr. Southern did not return to coaching. So people took Pitt football. Who knew people took Pitt football that seriously way back when, huh, Tim?
Yeah, that two things there you never see today. One someone caring that much about Pitt football, and then two, man, talk about a short-sighted athletic director. I mean, if you look at what college football is today and all the conference realignments and the NIL deals, and he's like, well, we're not going to really recruit. I mean, this is an academic institution. I mean, yeah, that was very short-sighted.
So what happens to Pitt football? They goes on to not be very good, surprise, surprise, until 1955. They hired John Michelson, who I think played for Dr. Sutherland. And he took them to the Easter Championship, and they were respectable for a while. They would not win another championship until 1976 under Johnny Majors. For Dr. Sutherland, he coached a football team called the New York Dodgers. And this is the football team, not the baseball team. And then in early 1940, at the age of 53, he went to World War II. And he served in the Navy and actually became a lieutenant commander in the Navy at 53. Unreal. After the war was over, he actually ended up coaching the Steelers, which we covered on the Dark Ages. And he got them to their only playoff game of that era, actually, until 1972. I don't know if anybody read or heard of Grantland Rice. I've heard of him. He's considered one of the greatest sports writers of that age. He described Dr. Sutherland as Scotland's greatest football son. I don't know. Was Scotland a great football producing nation? I don't know, but that's an interesting way to describe him. And unfortunately, he met his tragic end. He was on a scouting trip, and he found out, passed out in his car in Kentucky. He had actually died of a brain hemorrhage in a hospital in Cairo, Illinois. But Dr. Sutherland, probably the greatest coach in Pitt football history. I mean, it's pretty hard to argue with that. Him and Pop Warner, Johnny Majors, I don't know. Pat Narduzzi? No, probably not. But that's your top 3 or 4 for Pitt football. But I bet not a lot of people probably knew about that. That was definitely a very messy exit for all involved.
Yeah, Pitt has such a long history of just shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, they're kind of like the Cleveland Browns of the collegiate ranks. For
yeah,
sure.
That's a good comparison. Yep.
Yeah. So moving back to the Steelers, Bill Dudley And Dudley was a first-round draft pick in 1942. He was nicknamed Bullet Bill. And he was only 5'10", 182 pounds, but he had won the league's rushing. I guess his rookie year was 696 yards. He actually was another guy who was part of his career. He left for football because of World War II. He was a B-25 and B-29 pilot in the Pacific. So, wow. So he returned back in 1945 because the war is over. We don't need people to drop bombs on Japan anymore. So he's back in the Steelers uniform, and he came back and had 2 pretty good years. He really liked the Rooneys and stuff. But what happened was Dr. Sutherland, once again, comes back to play here. He is now coaching the Steelers. And actually, he had a really good career because he featured this single wing, and it really worked for Bill Dudley. And for some reason, I guess Sutherland was very strict disciplinarian, and Dudley kind of knew what he was doing. So they had a feud, and Dudley requested a trade, and finally the Rooneys traded him. And he just kept stirring stuff up, and he thought he knew better than Dr. Sutherland. Oh no, this guy only won 1 million championships at Pitt. And, I know the single wing was still a little antiquated probably in 1947, but it still probably worked in the NFL, obviously. And it's just, the guy just couldn't get along. But even after that, it ended up he really liked the Steelers. And his quote, he gave a quote here: "The Rooney family, I knew Mr. Rooney well." And he said, "I only played there 3 years, but the family was so unique, and I know they still are. It's a family organization, first class, all business, no messing around." What happened to Bullet Bill? Well, he ended up getting traded to Detroit and then to Washington. He actually made the NFL Hall of Fame in 1966. He actually coached and scouted for the Steelers under Kiesling, and I guess that would have been the 60s, I'm thinking, 50s and 60s. And the Steelers stunk due to losing him and Sutherland. That was another, back then they just couldn't catch a break. So, I don't know. Good old Bullet Bill. They just couldn't get along.
It's funny. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, and here you have, decades before that, you had a sort of a similar thing where couldn't get along with the coach and the ownership. And I believe reportedly his teammates also said he was kind of a locker room cancer because he was very much, he was the smartest guy in the room and made sure everybody knew he was the smartest guy in the room, one of those personalities.
He's contradicting the coach, and it's not like it's some rookie coach or somebody like Walt Kiesling who literally doesn't know what they're doing. Dr. Sutherland won a lot of football games, so I would kind of take his word for it. But and now, last but not least, our messy exit. And maybe people might not say this. I don't know. I think this applies to Pittsburgh. I'm going to say Miami, Virginia Tech, and Boston College leaving the Big East, which leads to Pitt leaving a few years later. I don't think Pitt's exit was as messy as these guys, but so the Big East, it was a basketball conference. Well, it still is, and it was basically a basketball conference that had some teams that played football. And one of those teams is Miami, and they're just a few years removed from winning a national championship in 2001. They almost won. They should have won in 2002, but unfortunately Willis McGahee got hurt early in that game, and then they got totally hosed on a questionable pass interference call. I don't know if you remember that, Tim. That was horrible.
I do.
That was a bad call. Yeah,
it was.
So the messy exit, Miami wants to make more money to keep up with their in-state rivals, Florida State and Florida, and they're having trouble doing that in the Big East because the Big East doesn't have a championship game, and also playing Temple every year in football probably doesn't help. So the ACC, for their part, was looking to expand and get a championship game for its conference. And here's something totally stupid. The NCAA had a rule that you needed 12 members to have a conference championship game. And so that's the whole motivation, is to get a championship game. Why do you need 12? Who cares? Who cares how you decide? Oh, it's got to be fair. It was just dumb. It was a dumb rule. And that's really what part of the reason, unless they're using it as an excuse for all this. just to realign and make more money. But if this is like the motivator, it's the dumbest thing ever. So I mean, maybe this is just an excuse for the teams to hunt money. So the NCAA created this mess. And let me digress and say, when I say the NCAA, it's easy to say like they're like the FBI or the IRS or the NSA, like some shadowy government agency. Do you know who makes up and runs the NCAA?
Who?
That would be college presidents. So the college presidents, the people that run the colleges, can't figure this out. These guys have PhDs and can't figure this out, or don't want to figure this out. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they just, these are supposedly the smartest people in their society, and they can't run a football league. Good job, So just the conference championship games were born at the Division II level in the 80s, and then they ended up, going up to the SEC because they wanted to have a super conference. So when they had invited South Carolina and Arkansas, so that's kind of how this all got rolling. And this stupid rule about 12 football members, but actually it was actually revoked in 2016, so the Big 12 could have its championship game with only 10. So that's how important that stupid rule was. And the ACC, they had actually studied expansion for more than 18 months. And the teams they originally wanted were Miami, Syracuse, and Boston College. But it didn't happen because Virginia's president, see, once again, this is the people who really run thing. He was pressured by state because the Virginia people wanted Virginia Tech, not who was at Syracuse, because then you would have a Virginia Tech game. And I guess Virginia Tech, I think ended up suing, but dropped it because they got let in. So the teams ultimately invited were Miami, Virginia Tech, and Boston College. I mean, it was a joke. I remember being really ticked off about this at the time because everybody was like, oh, the Big East sucks. The Big East sucks. And then it's like, oh, we suck so much you want all our teams, And it was a money thing. And that's really happened. And you can blame Donna Shalala. I think she was in the Clinton administration and then found a nice cushy job as president of Miami, or though she thought, who knows, she'd get wrapped up in all this mess. But so the ACC gets its 12 teams eventually and gets its conference game. So eventually this starts the ball rolling till Pitt leaves in 2011. And I think Pitt's is a little more smooth because there had been more going on. They just paid an extra $5 million. They had actually paid extra money to leave early. So, and it's funny. Here's a quote. There was a guy in Louisville when Pitt left in 2011. He said, "Oh, Mark Nordenberg has violated the trust of the rest of the conference members and called the matter slippery." You know what the punchline to all that is? Louisville joined the ACC in 2014. So I'm offended by all this, sir. Hey, can I join? Yeah.
Yes.
And the worst, I think this is like the worst. And like WVU got left out and now has to play Texas Tech and Lubbock. Because that's like a natural rival for West Virginia. So, what's the big fallout from this? Miami has basically gone into oblivion. I don't think they won an ACC championship. I don't even know if they've been in an ACC championship game. I'm not even sure they won an ACC championship. I know Virginia Tech has been in a couple ACC championship games. I think they won one. Pitt finally did win its ACC conference championship in 2021. Well, the mess we're in now is Pitt beat WVU in 2008 in the infamous 13-9. That kind of put the nail in the coffin for the Big East, and then more alignment has happened because of all this. So this has led to more and more messy exits. USC and UCLA are in the Big Ten, and Texas and Oklahoma have moved to the SEC. What if we could go back in our time machine and go to 2003, and I walked up to you in 2003, Tim, and I said, in 2022, USC and UCLA will be in the Big Ten, and Texas and Oklahoma will be in the SEC. What would you have done? You would have laughed.
Yeah, the whole thing's I don't get it. I just don't. I don't understand how it's good for any of the fans. But people just chug along. I mean,
Yeah,
yay.
yeah.
USC is going to play Penn State every year. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Sure.
But that's not the worst part. College football sucks, and it's because of the university presidents, and they just could never figure out how to come up with a regular season schedule and a postseason, and also how to share all the money so that you could have a competitive and compelling games that fans want to see. And it really isn't that hard. So now you have Pitt playing North Carolina and Duke in football. And now you're going to have UCLA play Indiana. That sounds like a great basketball game, doesn't it, Tim? Guess what? They're going to play in football. Who the hell cares about that game?
Yeah.
I don't think the people from UCLA or Indiana care about that game. And that's the problem, is that they always said, oh, we have the most meaningful regular season. Really? Really? Are you sure about that? Because I guarantee you that game's going to happen at some point in the near future, or USC versus Northwestern, or Purdue versus UCLA, or any Iowa, even Iowa and USC. Come on.
It'd be the equivalent of, like, I don't know, if the NFC East like pillaged teams from the AFC South or something, right? Like, you're right. It should have just been one big organized one big organized sport, and the conferences just should have been regional. That's how they were.
That makes the most sense, because like Pitt and West Virginia could both have 5 wins, but that game means something because it's a rivalry.
Well, and the Big Ten used to be, like this region of schools that were kind of all in that like Rust Belt area.
What happens when Maryland has to go to LA to play USC or UCLA?
Right, but they will, because again, like you said, it should have just been. It was an easy enough thing to do. No one ever bothered to do it, and now it's just everybody for themselves, and they're hyper focused on which conference has the most revenue and how can we. Oh no, now we're third. ACC is now third, so now what? Either the ACC has to pillage schools, or they're going to be pillaged, and it's like, man, what a. It's really, really hard to care anymore.
Yeah, it's like my dad said that years ago. Like when Pitt started playing Duke and North Carolina, or like who else do they play? Like Georgia Tech. No offense, like who cares? Who cares about any of those games? And I'm sure there's going to be Pac-10 fans, UCLA fans are going to say the same thing. Like if I have to play, pick, because it's either going to be Rutgers or Maryland or Indiana or Purdue. That's your 4. You're going to have to play one of those 4 teams. So they've ruined the sport, and only the way that these are supposedly the smartest people in the country, and you can't even run a football conference, or like a football league. It really isn't that hard. It really, really isn't. That's enough of me soapboxing. If there's any messy exits I forgot, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Please like and follow us so we can get more people listening, and so me and Tim don't have our messy exit from our own podcast here. But thanks for listening. We appreciate everybody listening, and have a great one.